You get a raise. Maybe it's $800 a month. Maybe it's $1,500. You've been working hard, probably for years. And for about 3 weeks, you feel incredible. You go out to nicer places. You finally stop driving that thing you've been embarrassed about in the work parking lot. You move somewhere with a gym in the building and granite countertops. And it all feels completely earned. But 6 months later, you sit down and look at your bank account, and it looks exactly the same as it did before the raise. Not similar, exactly the same. My name is Nico, and today we're going to break down the lifestyle creep trap, specifically the version that nobody actually talks about, not the obvious surface level stuff. I'm not going to tell you to stop buying coffee. I'm talking about the deeper, psychological version of this trap, the one that doesn't just cost you money on the way up, but actually locks you in on the way down. The version where you don't just spend more as you earn more, you genuinely become incapable of spending less without it feeling like your entire life is falling apart. If this channel is new to you, I genuinely appreciate a subscribe because we dig into these hidden financial patterns every single week. Now let's get into it. Here's the context. Real household incomes in the US have risen meaningfully over the past decade, somewhere around 22% in nominal terms. And yet, the Federal Reserve reports that personal consumption expenditures have kept pace with almost every single dollar of that growth. Bankrate found that nearly half of all Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and not just low-income earners, but people making $75,000, $90,000, even over $100,000 a year. According to data from Empower, the average American saves just 5 to 6 cents of every dollar they earn. We are collectively making more money than we ever have, and somehow building less wealth than we should. That gap between income growth and actual wealth building is almost entirely explained by lifestyle creep. And yet, most personal finance content about it stops at the obvious. You spent the raise instead of saving it. What they never explain is why that pattern is so hard to break once it starts. That's exactly what we're getting into today. Let me introduce you to two people, Troy and Marcus. Both 29 years old, both working at the same company, both get promoted around the same time. Both walk away with a raise of exactly $1,200 a month. Same income jump, same city, same starting point. Here's where everything diverges. Troy does what almost everyone does. He thinks, I've been grinding for 3 years, I deserve a little upgrade. And honestly, he's not wrong. He moves from a $1,100 apartment to a $1,450 apartment. Nicer building, gym in the lobby, closer to where his friends live. He trades in his used Honda for a leased mid-size SUV, $380 a month. He starts eating out a little more regularly, upgrades his phone earlier than he planned, adds a couple of streaming services he'd been putting off. Each one of those decisions individually is completely reasonable. That is the entire trap right there. Because by month 4, Troy's raise is fully absorbed. He is making $1,200 more a month and spending exactly $1,200 more a month. His bank account balance looks identical to what it did before the promotion. But here's the part nobody talks about. Troy doesn't feel like he made a mistake. He feels like he leveled up. And that feeling is the mechanism that makes this trap so difficult to escape. Marcus does something different. Not because he's wired differently or has some kind of superhuman discipline, but because someone showed him the math before that first paycheck hit his account. Marcus commits to automatically investing $800 of that $1,200 raised the day it arrives, before it ever touches his checking account, before he has a chance to get used to seeing it. He upgrades his apartment by $150 a month because, genuinely, his old place was rough and the change was real. And he lets the remaining $250 quietly improve his everyday life without any dramatic overhaul. His life got a little better, but let me show you the math on what that $800 a month actually becomes. Invested consistently at an average 8% annual return over 25 years, Marcus is looking at over $757,000. Not from a windfall, not from a business exit or an inheritance. From one single decision about how to handle one raise made once, automated, and left alone. That's the math. And the math is brutal in both directions. Now here's where it gets really interesting, because this isn't just about the numbers. The real trap is psychological, and it has a name. Researchers call it hedonic adaptation, the scientifically documented tendency for human beings to rapidly return to a stable emotional baseline, regardless of positive changes in their circumstances. That new apartment feels incredible for about 3 weeks. The SUV smells like progress for maybe a month. Then it's just your car. The novelty evaporates completely, and what you're left with is a higher fixed monthly obligation and a new internal baseline for what normal feels like. And here's the critical piece. That new normal becomes your floor. Not your ceiling, your floor. The level below which you are no longer comfortable. The level that now registers emotionally as deprivation. That is the psychological mechanism behind lifestyle creep that almost nobody explains out loud. Think about Tyler. Tyler got promoted about 2 years ago, bigger salary, better title, everything he'd worked toward. He moved into a nicer apartment, signed a car lease, started flying direct instead of dealing with layovers, upgraded his wardrobe because the new role seemed to require it, and started going to nicer restaurants, because that's just what his new peer group did on weekends. None of it felt like excess. All of it felt like arrival, like he had finally made it to where he was supposed to be. But about 18 months later, Tyler's company went through a round of restructuring. He survived the cuts, but barely. And for the first time in 2 years, Tyler sat down and actually totaled his fixed monthly expenses. The number was $1,900 higher than it was before the promotion. And when he tried to mentally walk through what he could cut, he could not identify a single line item that felt cuttable. The apartment lease had 8 months left. The car was signed for 3 years. His entire social life had migrated into the restaurant scene of his new neighborhood with a friend group that operated at that spending level without a second thought. Tyler was not broke. He was trapped. Money was coming in, but every dollar had a predetermined destination. There was nothing left that was actually his. And that's the crazy part. Because what Tyler experienced, what millions of people are quietly experiencing right now, isn't just a spending problem. It's an identity problem. Somewhere in those 18 months, his lifestyle stopped being something he enjoyed and became something he was. His address became part of how he saw himself in the mirror. His car became a signal of where he stood in the hierarchy. His restaurant choices became social currency with people he was quietly trying to keep pace with. At that point, downgrading isn't a financial decision anymore. It registers emotionally as a loss of status, as regression, as failure. And that psychological barrier, that is precisely what the consumer economy is engineered to produce. Real estate developers know that once you associate your home with your self-worth, price resistance drops significantly. Automotive brands spend billions ensuring that once you drive a luxury trim level, the base model feels like a punishment. It is not accidental. Lifestyle creep is not a personal character flaw. It is a feature of how the consumer economy is designed to function, and most people never realize they're inside the system until they're already locked in. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Nico, come on, people are allowed to enjoy their money. You work hard, you should live well. And I completely agree with that. That is not the argument I'm making here. The argument isn't that a nice apartment or a comfortable car or a good meal is a bad decision. The argument is that most people make those decisions without ever actually running the calculation. They upgrade because it feels right, because everyone around them is doing it, because the payment fits the budget, but they never sit down and price out the true long-term cost of the choice. But here's the part that will blow your mind once you actually see that number. Once you price it out, honestly, the decision looks completely different. You might still make it, but you make it with open eyes instead of just drifting along with what everyone around you treats as normal. So here's the opportunity cost payoff I want you to sit with. Troy, 25 years later, has a comfortable life. Month to month, his lifestyle probably looked a little better than Marcus's in those early years, nicer place, better car, more meals out. But Marcus doesn't just have $757,000 more in his investment account. He has something Troy can't purchase on his current setup. Options. Marcus can retire earlier. He can take a calculated risk on something he actually believes in. He can absorb a job loss without a financial emergency cascading through every corner of his life. He can look his boss in the eye without the quiet desperation of someone who genuinely cannot afford to walk away. That is not just a financial advantage. It is a quality of life difference that compounds in ways no spreadsheet can fully measure. And it all traces back to one decision made at one specific moment, before the lifestyle had time to solidify into an identity. Here's the empowering part, and this is where I want to leave you. Lifestyle creep is reversible. Slowly, strategically, and with real intention, it absolutely is. The first step is running the honest calculation on every upgrade you've quietly accepted in the last 3 years. Add it all up. The total number, when you see it written out clearly, tends to change something. The second step is separating the parts of your lifestyle that genuinely produce joy from the parts that are just maintaining an image for people whose opinion of you probably matters less than you think. Those are very different categories. Most people have never separated them. The third step is the identity reframe, because the person who doesn't get consumed by lifestyle creep isn't depriving themselves. They are building choices. They become the kind of person who can walk away from a bad situation, absorb a hard year, take a real risk on something they believe in, or retire while they still have the physical energy to enjoy what they've built. The difference between falling into this trap and not falling in is almost always just one honest calculation made at the right moment before the raise disappears, before the lease is signed, before the upgrade feels non-negotiable. That one calculation is worth more than the raise itself. If you want to keep building on this, there is a video right up here that breaks down the real opportunity cost of the biggest financial decisions most people make in their 30s. It picks up exactly where this one ends. If today gave you something real, a like and a share genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to see it. Quick reminder, I am not a licensed financial advisor, so please do your own research and speak with a professional before making any financial decisions. But the math doesn't lie. And now you've seen it.